Good morning, everyone. Happy Palm Sunday. Today we're thinking about Mary Magdalene, and when we think about the Easter events, the name of Mary Magdalene is right up there with Pilate and Peter and Joseph of Arimathea, through whose eyes we have been looking at the story in the last few weeks. But today we're looking through Mary's eyes. Mostly we remember that Mary was there at the tomb on the resurrection morning. She was the first person to see and talk to the risen Jesus. She got to become the first messenger of his resurrection. She got to become the first person to bring the good news. Isn't that amazing? But why Mary? Why choose her? First of all, we need to clear up who she was. I think it's far easier to explain who she wasn't, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about her. She was not the sister of Martha. She was not Mary, the mother of Jesus. She is not the sister of Lazarus. She was not the sinful woman who poured perfume on Jesus in Luke 7. And she was not the woman caught in adultery in John 7. And she is not Jesus' wife, despite Dan Brown trying to convince us otherwise. She is not a reformed prostitute. In fact, there are no biblical references that support any of those suppositions. So where did Mary get this so-called dodgy past from? A man, Pope Gregory, who in the 6th century spoke all these things out about her, all of which have no biblical grounding whatsoever. Bless him. So who was Mary? Mary's name is Mary Magdalene, which is probably just a reference to the town that she came from, as Jesus was Jesus of Nazareth. Magdala was a village on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, so therefore Mary Magdalene. Mary was delivered of 7 demons by Jesus in Luke 8 and is mentioned 12 times in the Gospel, which is more than the majority of the disciples. She was part of a group of women who travelled with Jesus and the disciples, and as we read in Luke 8, she helped support Jesus' ministry through her own finances along with the other women. From the other 2 readings in Mark 15 and John 20, we know that she was present at the crucifixion, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. But why Mary? Was it that she was just there on that Sunday morning because she happened to be the first person up? She got up early that day? I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence at all that Jesus revealed himself to Mary. I think that what we read in John 20 is the fulfillment of God's great rescue plan. The plan that began in the Garden of Eden. We have 2 gardens. We have the Garden Tomb and the Garden of Eden. And there are 2 angels at the gates of the Garden of Eden. 2 angels in Jesus' tomb and 2 women, Eve and Mary. Is Jesus suggesting that at this moment he is reversing the fall? And that what happened in the Garden of Eden he is now undoing. When Jesus rises from the grave, having overcome death and beaten sin and is risen by the Spirit of God, the first place he comes to is a garden. And the first person he's in contact with is a woman. Just as Adam and Eve eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and their eyes are opened to nakedness and shame and sin, God comes after them saying, Adam and Eve, where are you? So the same happens in this story. Jesus comes to Mary, and she doesn't recognize him. Yet, when he says her name, her eyes are opened, and she sees him. She sees who he is in the mirroring of this story. And I believe God is saying that he's the God of details. He's the God of redemption. He's the God of restoration. He is the God who comes to find us. Mary's life is a micro illustration of God's macro plan. I think that the Gospel of John is offering us a new Adam and Eve, putting right the fatal error of the fall and revealing to us the new creation. Humanity fell again in the Garden of Gethsemane, another garden, where all the disciples scattered and hid. And just as it had fallen in Eden when the man and the woman hid. here it is, 3 days later, restored, redeemed, and transformed. Why Mary? Why choose Mary? Mary Magdalene was healed of 7 demons, restoring her to her manufacturer's settings. And then she was commissioned by Jesus to be the first messenger of his resurrection. She got to be the first person to proclaim the greatest good news ever. I think the question we should be asking really is, why not Mary? Mary Magdalene was an afflicted, tormented soul, healed by Jesus, restored, redeemed, and transformed to be his most loyal and sacrificial follower. Mary's love and gratitude expressed itself in devotion to Christ. She owed much, gave much, loved much, and served much. Why not Mary? God is the God of details, of redemption, of restoration, and of transformation. Jesus healed Mary, redeemed her, restored her to her manufacturer's settings, and then she was commissioned by him to become the first messenger of his resurrection. And it's that same God who comes to find us. And then if we ask, why not Mary? Then should we not ask, why not us? Do we all have a part to play in God's redemptive story? The answer is yes. He is the God who comes to find us. He healed us. He redeemed us. He restored us to our manufacturer's settings. And now we are commissioned by Jesus to be the messengers of his resurrection. Mary owed much, gave much, loved much, and served much. Are we not exactly the same as her? Why not you? Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, I have seen the Lord. And she told them what he'd said to her. And they in turn went to the world and told the world. You, me and you, us, we've been healed, we've been redeemed, we've been restored to our manufacturer's settings. And we are now commissioned by Jesus to be messengers of his resurrection. We are to go into the world and tell them about the risen Christ. This week coming is Holy Week, and it's obviously going to be very different this year. However, on Easter Sunday, we will still be celebrating Jesus' resurrection together, but separately. That day we will be shouting in our loudest voices, I have seen the Lord. I am healed, I am redeemed, and I am restored, and I'm commissioned by Jesus to be the messenger of his resurrection. Why us? Why not us? Amen.